Fatty and I are planning a show that will focus on how to get your fluids, bottles, or hydration packs, or a combination of both. We got interviews lined up. We're going to talk to folks. We're going to talk to Fatty about his experiences with this. So you'll want to pay attention when that show posts. It'll be a good one. It'll help you get ready for race day. It's going to be a drinking episode in a sober sense.
It'll be our first ever sober drinking episode.
That's right. We try to do this show just a little, relaxed. Let's put it
loose.
That way. Loose, yes. And as you've heard us preach here before, hydration is one of the pillars to success at the Leadville Trail 100. And Fatty, as you know, plain water simply does not have the goods to keep up with what gets sweated out.
No. Yeah, at the very least, you want to have electrolytes in your fluid and usually some calories, especially on endurance races. And a great option for both is Floyd's of Leadville Hydration Fuel Drink Mix. Per scoop, it has 30 grams of carbs, BCAAs to counter fatigue. It's got electrolytes. It's got everything a growing racer needs. Or if you're not trying to grow, that's okay too. Biggest surprise to Hottie and to me was that it also has Floyd's rest and recovery ingredient, CBD. We asked Floyd about taking in CBD during an intense ride.
Well, so we put a fairly low dose in that, and there's some people seem to get a sort of a stimulating effect with very, very low doses, like an energizing effect. I mean, if you're dealing with inflammation from training or pain from long efforts, it's a lot harder to get rid of pain after it's there than it is to prevent it if you know it's coming.
I have been doing a bottle of Floyd's hydration along with a bottle of just electrolytes on most of my rides since coming across the Floyd's hydration drink mix, including my recent 115-mile Chino grinder. Fatty, this stuff works great for the long rides.
I have still, that is one thing that I have not been using, but based on your recommendation, going to have to give it a try. Everyone, be sure to check out Floyd's of Leadville. It is our presenting sponsor at the floydsofleadville.com site. Use the code FATTY at checkout for a 15% discount on your first 2 orders.
And thanks, Floyd's of Leadville, for sponsoring this show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Floyd's of Leadville. This is Season 2, Episode 14 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, freaks you out for the highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country.
Hottie, talk about freaked out and built up. I have my 2019 Leadville 100 race bike built up, and I'm pretty excited. In fact, you might say I'm a little freaked out because it is ready to roll. I've taken it out on its first ride, and this bike is so pretty. Can we talk about it for a few minutes? Can we focus on me for a while?
A few. We could, you know us. Come on.
It
we
might
could
be
take
the
a whole
whole
show
show.
up on. Yeah, we could talk a whole show about chain stays. I mean, that's what we're capable of doing here. So, I mean, after all, you've done this race more than 20 times. Your equipment choices for this race are no doubt well informed at this point.
Yeah, I would say that they are. I've learned a lot from my experiences. Also, the bike is just so sexy, and I want to brag about it a little bit.
Okay, tell me what you've got, and I'll barge in and ask why.
Okay, this is going to be a list from top to bottom, or actually sort of from inside out. First thing, what it's all hanging on, Specialized Epic S-Works hardtail frame. Based on what I did last year, which was really focused on the Epic full suspension bike, you might think that I was kind of making that conversion, but the fact is I really like hardtails, and I just don't think that's ever going to change. I do, however, from last year's racing experience, love the geometry of the Specialized Epic. I feel right at home, and I have a lot of history with the Specialized fit and feel. I've been riding, I think, Specialized since I got my Stump Jumper single speed, I think 5-6 years ago. And this frame is incredibly light. Specialized says that it is the lightest frame that they have ever made, and that includes their road bikes too. And the bike feels light, it just feels super nimble. But I would be lying if I said that all of those things were the main reason. The fact is, the treatment, the paint on this thing is just, it was so compelling. It is oil slick gloss mint. And you almost have to see a picture. I'll put some up on the website, but it's a chameleon pigment. It is just insane. It is purple from some angles. It is green from other angles, and it has metallic flecks in it. It's just gorgeous. You can hear in my voice how much I love the look of this thing.
Yeah, so, I live close to Hollywood, Fatty, and that bike looks like it belongs on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. It's got a nice sparkle to it. There's like stardust in there or something. So
yeah,
a beautiful, beautiful looking rig. Now, for folks who haven't followed the Specialized story, you're hearing Fatty say Stumpy and Epic and Hardtail. And look, what Specialized did with their Hardtail race bike is they finally went, you know what, folks, this is not really a stump jumper. The Hardtail race bike should fit in the Epic line along with its full suspension brother and or sister. So that's why they've just migrated what was the Stumpy Hardtail S-Works to an Epic Hardtail.
Yeah.
It's the same idea of a bike, Fatty, but I want to hear it from you. Does it still feel like the same rig you've been used to, that Stumpy Hardtail race bike that you've raced so many times before?
It feels a little tighter and lighter, but I will say that I fit on it just like I do on my old stump jumper hardtails. And if you were to blindfold me and say, are you, and not allow me to shift, then I would say, I just, from the saddle feel, from the positioning and my fit, it is just like it feels a lot like a 4 or 5 year ago stump jumper hardtail. Just a little bit lighter, a little faster.
Right, and I'll second that. I just recently sold a Stumpy Hardtail to a buddy of ours, in fact, after a long run with it, or actually two of them. And yeah, those bikes just, I'm the same way with you. They always fit great for me. The large was just perfect. So,
yep.
Great bike. Even the older models, I have a friend, Pete Smith. He's done Leadville, I don't know how many times, probably a dozen times. He's been on his 2009 Stumpy Hardtail S-Works practically the whole time. So, yeah, really a good bike, a proven machine at the Leadville Trail 100. Okay, not a lot of suspension on a hardtail, but there's something there, right? Something to break up the chop.
Yeah, up front, I'm trying something different. I got the Fox Stepcast 32, 100 millimeters, got the remote lockout because when I am climbing, I like to stand, and when I like to stand, I like to have I should say, the front suspension moving it all under me. I just like to be able to row. That said, when it is unlocked and it's the action on it to lock, unlock right now when it's brand new is very light. The feel of the bike is surprisingly plush up front. And the Stepcast 32, boy, it is honestly a little weird the first time or two I rode it because it is so narrow. You know that the whole idea behind the Fox Stepcast is they carved out space in the lower stanchions and brought the whole fork in, so it is a decidedly narrower and lighter fork than it would otherwise be. Got that instead of the RockShox Sid on Jonathan Lee of Trainer Road's recommendation. He was saying that it has good sort of low end. It floats over the chattery stuff, and that's a really good thing to have for Leadville. You are on a chattery dirt road and sort of just bumpy, rocky stuff a lot of the time, and so the little hit stuff being able to be plush for that is nice. So liking that so far. I'll have more to say maybe a little bit later on.
Yeah, the Stepcast has quickly become popular both with us amateur riders and on the UCI World Cup circuit. You see it all over the place right now. And you're spot on with your analysis there. The Fox has always been known as somewhat more of a plush ride. That's the thing I've picked up on it. I'm actually a little bit more of a RockShox fan in general. Yeah. I mean, at home when I'm burying my front end into a deep hard hit, I find the RockShox just holds in there a little bit better than the Fox. But that said, Leadville is more of a chatterfish. It's that low speed compression. You want the fork probably to open up just a little sooner than the RockShox will. And I think the Fox does a slightly better job on that, just under that chatter, what they call that low speed compression. And I think the Fox is just a little more sensitive to those types of bumps. So interesting to see how you come out with this one, with the Fox, what your final say is after the Leadville Trail 100.
Yeah, my first impressions have certainly been good, and I'll of course be hitting a few rocks as I do the Silver Rush 50, which is a much rockier course than the 100. I will say that I am not saying anything at all against the RockShox forks. I have the RS1 on, I think, 2 other mountain bikes, and my wife has one on 1. So we've been very happy with RockShox, but I've just been wanting to try something a little bit different, and this is it.
So are you saying that there's a RockShox brain fork sitting around somewhere that might be for sale?
No, I've never actually had a RockShox brain fork.
It didn't come with the bike then?
No.
You bought frame only. Okay.
Yep, that's the way that this one came. If you wanted to get that chameleon pigment, it's the only thing you were getting from Specialized was the frame. Everything else I pretty much sourced out.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the way racers like to do it anyhow. I mean, people
it
who
is
want
fun to build up.
Yeah, when you're trying to dial your bike, I mean, really, the best thing to do is just start with a plain frame and nothing else attached to it, then add the bits after that. So,
yeah.
Now, the rest of the bike, well, is going to revolve around 2 of our good friends, and that would be Shimano and Envy.
Oh, yeah. This is in a lot of ways the sponsor mobile. But as you and I have said many times, I think off air, maybe even once or twice on air, the only way we accept any sponsors for this show is if we happen to love their products anyway. And boy, I am such a fan of Shimano, and the 2019 XTR 12 speed. I was so excited to try that. And I went with the full XTR drivetrain brakes. I have, XTR pedals and the Pro, which is owned by Shimano. I have the Griffin saddle. So, very, very much a Shimano presence on this. Mm-hmm. The chainring, I went with a 32. You and I've talked about what to ride up front. I may switch that out to a 34 for a couple of reasons. If folks want to listen to another show you and I do, the Marginal Gains podcast, we talk about how bigger rings are a smarter watt-saving thing. And also 32 by 51 makes for an incredibly low granny gear. And as you know, I'm much more of a masher than a spinner.
Yeah. The deal there is the 32 wrapping around the 10, which would be your highest gear.
Yeah.
The way the chain has to angle makes for a little more friction.
Yeah, the chain's got to bend more, and that takes energy. It's got to bend more,
and it's going to take some energy. And if you don't need the 3251, if that's too low for you, you might as well, in your case, gear up, put the 34 on, lower some of that tension, lower some of that friction when you are in your biggest gear, and you will be in the 3410, I think, at times. Not a lot,
sure.
But probably at times. And then you'll also reduce some of that friction in the process. Now, the deal with that, I know you haven't ridden the bike a lot. Of all the things that Shimano did with this group set, the thing that gets the 5 stars, but gets a little knock too at times, is this cassette. Now, you're going to go 1x. They do 2x in this system too. Mm-hmm. The 1051, Shimano has made the leap away from that HG hub body they've been using for years, and they've made a new microspline hub body, which does mean you have to go out and source a hub body if you're going to do their new 12-speed Gruppo.
Yeah.
DT Swiss has got it. Obviously, Shimano's got the new hub body on their hubs. Industry 9 is another one. I think that's the hub you have, so that's why you're able to run the 1051 at this place. But the cassette itself is supposed to shift. I mean, it makes it all worth it in the end. Yeah, you get a new hub body, but it's almost the reason to get this group set is that cassette. They say it shifts under load, like without even hesitation. Like you could be doing a fatty stand up Columbine and want to go from that second to lowest gear to that lowest gear under full force, and it just doesn't even hesitate. Have you had any chance to try this out yet?
I have. Of course, the first thing that I'm going to do with that bike is go out and do some hard climbing on it, because I want to see, does this light bike, the stiff bike, does it climb like I want and expect it to? And it's pretty amazing. That I've been riding last year, and anyone who listened to this podcast knows that I was riding with XT Di2, which was essentially just a mouse click to do any shift, and it would do the shift under pretty much any load. The XTR, which is not Di2, the new XTR is not Di2. It is still doing the shift. I have to press a little bit harder, but because this is not assisted by electronics, but I am finding that I am able to smoothly shift really from anywhere to anywhere. And I am super happy with this. It's, of course, it's always an adjustment to get used to a new drivetrain and a new frame and new everything. But I am, I'm feeling right at home really fast. I'm super happy with what I've got here so far. I would say similarly, the braking, the XTR brakes, moving from the XT brakes from last year. Oh, they are just perfect. No one makes brakes like Shimano.
Yeah. In fact, mechanics will love you too. They will tell you, even though they're supposed to be neutral, but they inevitably mechanics say, no matter what group set you're running, if you're running the other brand or whatever, try to lean towards Shimano brakes, because they like the mineral oil. They like the way it holds up. It does not break down like .51 does. So that's why mechanics tend to favor the XT, rather the Shimano brakes. Now, with the XTR line, you can get the race or the trail model of brakes. The trails offer a little more force for your braking. XTR is obviously a lighter setup. What did Fatty go with?
Oh, you know that I'm going to get the race. Of course I am. That's my way. You go and get the lightest frame that you could possibly find. And of course, that said, I have had no stopping issues whatsoever. That said, I am not the world's fastest downhiller. I'm a pretty cautious descender. So the extra burliness of the trail version wasn't going to be necessary in my case, and probably isn't necessary for anyone who is, building a bike with a Leadville race in mind. That said, honestly, from what I hear, you can't go wrong either way.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yes, and I understand that the XTR and the new line of brakes from Shimano do regulate better. Shimano did have a little issue with the grabbiness of the brakes. Like, they would really bring you to a stop quickly, and they've really worked on regulation a lot to make those things smooth out a little bit to the touch. Now, cranks, kind of an overlooked part, but Shimano is known for their forgings. They do a great job with cranks. They've stuck by aluminum. They've stuck by using metal cranks. They've tried carbon in the past, but they've always come back to their tried and true aluminum. The other thing they've done is they've gotten rid of the bolted spider, so your chain ring is now one of those center lock style chain rings. Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to say about those beautiful cranks?
Beautiful is really the main word I want to use. They are so elegant looking. Ever since, if you can cast your mind back to 20 years ago when Synchros was sort of the design king, I have loved the look of a well-conceived, well-crafted crank set. And these are, I think, probably the most beautiful cranks I have ever had. So I'm just going to say that. They are just, They add something to the bike, and this is a bike that it is not easy to add something to. So
Shimano, if they do one thing great, is forgings. They really know how to stamp out metals properly. It's definitely one of the strong points in their lineup. Now, you said XTR pedal. Have you always been a Shimano SPD pedal person?
No. This is, I would say, just last year when we started this show, I moved over to the SPD pedals. I have been a long time rider on the Time ATAC pedals. Yeah, and I like them fine. I sort of moved away from them last year, primarily because they just broken too many times, too often. Right. One of the pins tended to work loose, and it had happened on, I think, 3 of my pedals. And I said, I cannot have this happen while I'm in an important race. So I moved over to the XT pedals this year, XTR, and have had 0 problems. The cleats last a lot longer, and my only regret is that I did not make this move sooner. The XTR pedals are just, they click in easy, and they release when they need to, and they hold on without any perception of play. I'm liking these a lot.
Yep, my history with off-road pedals, ATAC myself, my first set, I think I had some SPD knockoffs, some Shimano knockoffs, then some ATACs. I've been a long-time Crank Brothers person. I've ridden those a lot, still have them on some bikes, but I've also recently acquired some XTR pedals, love them. I mean, I think both, when you go to Leadville, you're going to see, those are the 2 main camps. You're going to see Crank Brothers, you're going to see SPD style. Now, I probably don't need to ask this. I know when I got some XTR pedals, when Shimano sent me some, I said, send me the XTR Trails, the XTR Trail pedals, because they have a little more platform. You have the Trails or the Race. Do I need to ask?
You really don't need to ask. No, of course I went with the Race. And with the S-Fire shoes that I am riding, which is yet again Shimano, the fit is just perfect, and they lock in, and I feel like I've got a stable platform, although it is in reality, hardly any pedal there at all. So loving them just like that.
Okay, and a Pro Griffin saddle on top.
Yep.
Obviously, saddles are personal choices. It's hard to really tell somebody, go get a Pro Griffin, right? I mean, it's hard to say if everyone's going to fit that saddle, but obviously it's working for you.
Yeah, that is one thing where I honestly don't know how anyone sells any saddles to anyone. I love the Griffin, and there's probably a Shimano saddle that would fit just about anyone, but boy, I would be really reluctant to say, my butt is your butt shape too, right? Yeah. So find a saddle you like and ride it.
Yeah, we love Shimano, folks, but really do not mess with, if your backside is happy right now, do not change it. I don't care what brand you're riding.
Yeah.
Stick with it. Try afterwards. If you want to go try pro saddles after, great. But
I will say that, I will say that as someone who rode for a long time the Celitalia SLR saddle, and I think that is a very popular saddle, that the Griffin is a good and easy transition to make, that the shape is not very far off, and it's a pretty comfortable saddle. So if you're looking for a change because Celitalia has kind of done you wrong, like I've had a lot of Celitalia rails break, maybe give the Griffin a look.
Okay, now cockpit. Wheels.
Yeah.
Yes, here we go. Envy.
Yeah.
What?
Well, we talked a little bit about this time, Hottie, and so of course I have the Envy M525 wheels. Little tidbit on this, I kind of wound up in a battle of the sponsors here. I wanted to, of course, get the XTR hubs, but XTR hubs needed 28 spokes, and the 525 rims have 24 holes, so I went with the Industry 9, and that is a whole new level of angry bees. This is my first Industry 9 hubs. They are like Chris King, but if Chris King went to 11. So you'll hear me coming when you're crewing for me.
This is what I love about Industry 9. I once test rode a bike. Actually, they were Envy wheels with Industry 9 hubs. And I was on a very busy trail system, but I did not need a trail bell to warn anybody I was coming. All I had to do was coast my bike, and that I-9 hub would open up so loud, people would spin around. They thought a beehive was after them. So,
a rattlesnake. It's amazing. I don't have a ton to say about them yet. I feel like there's still sort of a little bit of break-in to happen on these hubs that they don't spin super fast quite yet, but that's something that just comes with a little bit of time, and I still got some time before it's time to race.
Yeah, bearings are still tight at this point. It's probably a little extra grease in there that just needs to be worked in, so that'll all happen for you. So now you're gonna put that Pro Griffin on something, right?
Oh, absolutely. On my seat post, I went with the 25 millimeter NV seat post. That gave me sort of a little bit of extra space in the cockpit. Stretched out, over the cockpit. I have ridden for so many years with 100 millimeter stem that I am used to riding laid out pretty flat and low. So I needed to stretch that cockpit out, but I no longer really want to stretch out over the front, with a longer stem. So the post puts me a little further back over the rear wheel, and I am finding that I like that a lot.
I'm a zero offset person, but that's only because of fit. I mean, I agree with you. I wish I could sit back a little bit farther and be over that back wheel at times. But it's just the way my bikes fit. My femurs are a little on the short side. So, but this, Envy makes a zero offset as well. And
yep.
In fact, I have one of those on my mountain bike. In fact, right now, 400 millimeter zero offset post.
Yeah, and that's what I have on my full suspension Epic as well, and it worked fine. I just wanted to stretch out a little bit lower, a little flatter on this bike, and experimenting with it. The nice thing is, the stem, the C post, you can monkey with those a little bit and find out what works for you. I'm definitely in the phase. It's June. I still have a couple of months, and it's not too late for me to figure out what works and what doesn't. Tomorrow is a Saturday as we record. I'm going to go out and do a 5-6 hour mountain bike ride. And, I may come back ready to make some changes. Who knows?
Sure.
It's a lot of fun. It's part of the new bike fun.
Okay, this is an interesting choice here to me, and that's your stem choice here. Again, from Envy, but length and the model you chose.
Yeah, they don't have an M5 stem. What they have is the M6 mountain stem. And I went with that, and it is a little bit shorter. So basically, by not going with their all-terrain, which is, mountain or road, their 100 millimeter stem, which I have done on many bikes, and going with a little bit shorter, a little bit boxier, a lot stiffer, I gave myself a little bit of a further back setting, which should be nice for some of the downhill on the Leadville 100. Kind of takes some of the weight off of the front, which is nice for me because my wrists tend to get sore when my weight is really far forward and with the upper body, kind of weighing my wrist down. So experimenting here a little bit, but and I'm once again not going to lie, the aesthetics got to me. It is a gorgeous stem. If you have seen the M6, it is once again beautifully designed, awesome looking mountain bike stem. And I'm a sucker for a good looking stem.
It's one of our downfalls as cyclists, I think, and that is we pick stems based on looks.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we do this all the time. I see people do this. I've done it too. I want the stem that looks right because, I don't know, the thing just sticks out there. So, okay, 85 mils. Yeah, that's getting shortish for you. And the M6 mountain stem, I guess the next leap up would be the 100. By the way, I have a 100. So if you need the 100 on race day, just let me know. I'll have a bike there sitting with a 100 Envy stem on it. You could switch it out pretty quick. And then, of course, the bar we've talked about a lot. That's the M5 bar.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we've talked a few times about this. I don't know if there's anything new we need to say. It's this makes 7 bikes. I'll just say that I have an M5 or its predecessor, the Sweep bar, mounted on in my garage currently. Not all of them are mine, but between Lisa and me, 7 bikes with one kind of bar. That says something about our experience with that bar.
Mm-hmm. Did you cut them down?
I cut some of Lisa's down. I tried cutting down one for myself and found that I just really prefer full width. And so that one migrated over to one of Lisa's bikes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, before we move on to the smaller bits, folks, we should remind folks, too, regarding Fatty's group set, the XTR group set, which is the top of the end group set, Shimano has also announced an XT and an SLX lineup in that same 12-speed group. It's a little heavier, but it's going to drop in price point, and it should be, if you really were pressed for a group set and you wanted that one, you should be able to get it in time for Leadville race day. Okay, now to the bits, the small things.
Yeah,
the bottle cages and all those other things you need on a mountain bike.
Yeah, a couple of little things, and we'll talk a little bit more about them later as we get closer to race day. But for the bottle cages, I went with Specialized. I am a big fan of their Rib Cage 2, and they have a carbon version. I went with that. For many years, I've been an Arundel Mandible guy, but on my Epic last year, I fell in love with the Rib Cage. They fit my preferred bottle, which is a very easy squeezing bottle, really well. And it's a narrower bottle, but I have not ejected a bottle since going to the rib cage, so happy with that. And then for my mount, for the GPS mount, I have the Garmin MTB mount. I like the way that it clamps on the handlebar and then sort of reaches back over the stem. It has an easy to adjust little pivot so that you could change the angle on it. And I like the way that it angles on the bike computer. And I just changed over from the 1030 that you and I have been riding with, the Garmin Edge 1030, to an 830 because it has a cool new feature called Climb Pro. And I'll talk more about that in another episode probably. But the basic idea behind that is it gives you an idea of how much you have left in your current climb, both in terms of miles left in the climb and altitude left in the climb. And on something that has a lot of false flats or is just a really hard to get over a climb like Powerline or Columbine, those are some nice numbers to know sometimes. So talk more about that another time.
Okay, the rib cage, I'll write that down. I have some spares, so if you break one, I'll have one at standby for you in the feed zone or wherever you might need it. I like the specialized side-loading cages, actually. I use those quite a bit. I use them they're on my Niner right now. Yep, I love those things. And you can get them in left or right and whatever color you want. Those are perfect. Grips, what kind of grips are you running?
I like the ones... I am blanking on the name.
ESI. I think you have ESIs, right?
Yeah, the kind you hate.
Silicone ones?
The sponge grips.
I recently put some ESIs back on because I was struggling with another brand. I just wanted to switch it up. And I put my ESIs on. I have some contoured ones, actually. They're like ergo-shaped.
Yeah.
And for now, I think I'm good with them. As long as I've got some gloves and some gel in them, I think that's going to work for me. So, yeah, I think you ride the ESI. You can get them in different colors and different thicknesses, right?
Yeah, I got the ESI Chunkies, which are sort of a wider grip. I like the padding on the grip as opposed to in the glove. We've talked about that a little bit before. But it's a decent grip. I've tried many of the different ergonomic type grips. I really wanted to love what Ergon has, and I know they have a lot of fans out there. I know that Specialized has their body geometry grips that have a little bit of a paddle shape, but I've just never been able to either get them positioned right, or maybe my hands are just not right. But I've never been happy with them, so I'm just back to the ESI super cheap chunky grips. Have to replace them fairly often because they break down fast. But since they're not very expensive, I can afford to.
Yeah, these are like saddles, folks. I mean, we're not going to sit here and recommend grips. There's no way. You get grips that fit you, and don't worry about it. If they fit you, that's great. Don't worry about what everyone else is riding. But interesting note there, Fatty, you didn't go with the lightest grips possible. You could have gotten lighter in that ESI line if you'd gone with a thin one. So that gets us to the next question, which is how much does this complete package weigh?
I want you to guess, okay? This bike, ready to ride, size medium, I weighed it.
Are we talking about with all the parts, like the cages, pedals, everything?
Cages,
or
pedals,
like showroom?
Saddle, everything is on, except for I did not put the saddlebag on.
Okay. And then tires?
The tires are a Maxxis Ardent Race 2.35s, both front and back. I will say that I will move those over to be Aspens after the Silver Rush, but before the Crusher and the Leadville 100. So, Ardent Race 235s right now.
So with the Ardents, which is not the lightest tire going for Maxxis by far. I mean, you can do lighter than that. You could do an Icon and a 2.0 or something really racy, obviously. So I would say, you've got to be, a little over, around 21 pounds.
Oh,
would
you're
be
close.
My guess.
You're very close. 20.3 pounds.
Nice.
That is a light bike.
And now, no excuse for missing that 9-hour mark.
Well, at least no bike-related excuse.
Yeah.
Roxanne Vogel is up next. She is going to get us prepped to fuel for race day. And that can be tricky stuff. And of course, it is one of the most important things you do on your big day in Leadville.
So in addition to taking notes on what Roxanne has to say, surf on over to our friends at The Feed. In addition to a wide range of sports nutrition, they have advice and expertise on how to get it done, how to combo the right foods, how to time them, how to keep them down on race day. A bad gut will almost certainly derail your buckle plans. The feed can help you leave nothing to chance.
Yeah, it's worth noting that our podcast listeners can get a great price on a pack curated for Leadville racers containing a lot of the foods that you hear Hadi and me talk about all the time in this show. Go to thefeed.com/Leadville for our Leadville pack. Be sure to use the code Leadville15 for 15% discount. You can also use that Leadville15 code for buying any amount of Morton at a 15% discount, which Hadi and I are big fans of and use in all of our races.
Again, thefeed.com/Leadville and use the Leadville15 code at checkout.
Now it's time for our nutrition segment with GU Energy Labs, Roxanne Vogel. Just a quick side note here, we recorded this segment a few weeks ago back when Roxy was still planning her lightning ascent, her big round trip to the summit of Everest and back.
And considering what a terrifying year it's been for climbers on Everest, we thought it would be worth mentioning that since the last time we recorded with her, she has made her attempt. She's back safe and sound, and we'll leave it at that without additional spoilers because we hope to get in some storytelling next time she records with us.
That's right. Yeah, I'm sure she has an amazing story to tell. I think it is safe to say that her recent adventure shows Roxanne does know at least a thing or two about fueling when the pressure is on. And that's what we're talking with her about in this segment. We're back with Roxanne Vogel, who is going to talk with us today about the day that we're listening to this podcast for, right? Our race day fueling strategy. Roxanne, this is such a huge part of all of the training, everything that we've been building up for. If you don't get your fueling strategy just right, you can have what ought to be a terrific day on the bike and have it turn into a terrible disaster of a day. I've had great days, I've had bad days, and it always seems both, whichever way it goes, to have something to do with whether I got my food strategy right. So help our listeners not have to go through all of the trial and error that I've been through for 20 years.
Well, Fatty,
that's a lot. I know.
It is a lot, but I think there are a few kind of guidelines that can at least get people headed in the right direction towards what they need to do to dial in their own nutrition. Because that's the craziest thing, is that what works for one person will not work for another person. And we see this all the time. So, you listen to all of these podcasts and you get these great ideas and then you're like, that's totally going to work for me. And you get on the bike and it doesn't work for you. So, we can give some guidelines and hopefully people will go and adjust accordingly, like figure out what works for them.
Right.
But that being said, there are some general sports nutrition guidelines that you can start with in order to get you headed in the right direction. So for one, carbohydrates are going to be king at this point because you are pushing yourself fairly hard and it's going to be the easiest thing to kind of break down, digest, and utilize for energy. So from a carbohydrate standpoint, you would be looking at anywhere in the range of maybe 30 to 60 and up to 90 grams of carbohydrates per hour, right? So that is roughly going to be maybe in the range of 250 to 350 calories per hour. And that doesn't have to be all from one source. That could be a combination of liquid calories. It could be solid calories. It can be, your gels even. It's just whatever kind of gets you to that sweet spot. And this is based on research that says that trying to push in more than 90 grams of carbohydrates an hour or more than like 350 calories an hour is going to end up in GI distress. So you don't want to try and push beyond that. But getting closer to that higher end might have a bigger benefit for you because you have more energy to burn, right? So I would say start by trying to see where you fall on that scale and then make those numbers work for you for the amount of time that you plan on being out there. So if you need maybe 250 calories per hour and you're trying to finish in 8 or 9 hours, do the math and see what that looks like and then divide it up and see at which aid station, or if you have crew, like at which, point you can reload your calories, have a definite plan. I've gone so far as like planning out where exactly a rider will take a gel, like before a certain hill or climb or whatever. But I think that making sure you have a plan in place is going to be huge. And a lot of times, liquid calories can be a saving grace, especially if it's a hot day out there. And it has been the last couple of years when I've been out there.
Mm-hmm.
So people may end up sticking more towards the liquid versus the solid calories.
Mm-hmm. Roxanne, for a lot of folks, for many folks, that is, unfortunately for goo, gels can play havoc with their stomach. I'm a lucky one. I don't have this problem. I can eat whatever the hell I want on race day, and I seem to be able to fire away. But for some folks, sensitive stomachs, the goos, the gels can mess with the GI tract. How can we help them use these fast carbohydrates but still keep their stomach in order?
Yeah, and that's totally fair, Hadi. I hear that all the time as well. And the first thing I always ask when I hear that people are having a hard time with the gel is, are you taking it with fluids? Because that's the first mistake I see. People are taking a gel and they're not rinsing it down with anything. And they're meant to be washed down with fluids. So First things first, give that a try. If you're not taking it the right way, then that could be explaining why you're having such a hard time with it. So you want to wash it down with at least a few big gulps of water, or like 6 to 8 ounces of water. So step one, make sure you're doing it right. Step two, if that still doesn't work for you, then, maybe it doesn't work for you. And maybe then, again, you could switch to more of a liquid calorie replenishment strategy and kind of supplement that plan with some solids here or there. I really am a fan of trying to get calories from a bottle, because you're killing two birds with one stone, right? So you're hydrating and you're getting your electrolytes, but you're also getting your calories. So it's like less things to manage versus trying to like drink enough fluid and then make sure you're eating enough calories and getting enough solids in and like using your hands for all these things. So I really like liquid calories, but yeah.
That brings up an interesting question. What is the difference when it comes to digestion and fueling between chewing food and just drinking it?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, it's really like a mechanical process. When you're chewing your food, you have to actually break it down into smaller bits and into this, kind of sludge that allows it to go down your esophagus and into your stomach. So there is mechanical work that goes into chewing and digesting solid foods versus liquids. Go down, really easy, hit your stomach, empty pretty quickly from the stomach, because they don't have to be broken down really by the chemicals in your stomach and the gastric juices. So it can be a bit more efficient process if you're doing liquid calories versus solid calories. But that being said, a lot of people don't want to be doing just liquids for 8 to 10 hours, and they get tired of that and they want something to chew on. Again, this is where kind of trying it out on your training rides is going to come in handy, because you'll realize at what point you really are craving something solid or something salty or something different, right? I do know people who can go the entire time on just liquid calories, and that works out perfectly for them. And it makes a really easy strategy, because they can just do 1 bottle per hour and get the 250 calories they need, 60 grams of carbs, the amino acids, etc. And that's all they do. And it's so simple.
I know that you are a very accomplished endurance racer. Describe, a few hours of your nutrition during a race. What do you eat? What do you drink? What else do you take during, say a 4-hour either training or racing run?
Yeah, sure. So I'm more of a trail runner, but I will definitely be out there as long as, say, 11 hours. I guess I did on a more recent race in October. But I really do love liquid calories. I guess you could probably tell by me talking so much about them.
Sure.
But so I'll do what we have a product called Roctane, and it is 250 calories, 60 grams of carbs, all the electrolytes you need. Yada, yada. It's got BCAAs to protect your muscles, beta alanine even. It's a workhorse, right? So it has everything. So that's my number one strategy. And from there, I will supplement in solids every here or there. So I might do, or gels. So I'll do maybe like a bottle of Roctane an hour and a gel every other hour. Or Maybe if I'm really feeling like I need some kind of texture or something, I'll do a Stroop waffle. There was only one point during my 11-hour race in October where at some point I just was like, I don't want anything right now. What do I want? And it was something salty. And that was the first time that it ever struck me that I just wanted something salty. And at that point, I think I grabbed some pretzels that happened to be at an aid station, and then I was fine. But yeah, sometimes like you'll just get a weird craving, and that's usually your body telling you need more of something, right? So it's probably sodium in this case. But yeah, that's typically what I do is the Roctane, and then I'll supplement with either Stroop waffles or gels.
Mm-hmm. Is there a place for plain water on race day, or is plain water just wasted space in your bottle cage? Should we have something in each of our bottles?
I'm never going to say that water is going to be wasted, but I do think that you could at least put some electrolytes or something in there, and it makes you want to drink a little more, right? So if there's flavor and if there's a little bit of saltiness to it, it actually influences your taste receptors and makes you want to drink more. Whereas plain water, you might not be as driven to drink, and you're more likely to get dehydrated that way. I mean, some people love just plain water, and that's awesome. But a lot of people at some point will get tired of it. And so that's when having a little bit of flavor and a little bit of sodium and sugar in there will help. And that's where the whole sports nutrition, sports drink industry was born, right?
Right. And another thing you didn't mention is part of our race day strategy. It comes from me every time I'm headed back up power line, and that is in a red and white can. I think they call it Coca something. Coca-Cola?
Yeah.
Caramel color, sugary, tasty.
It does ring a bell.
Right.
How does that work in our race day strategy for nutrition?
I know a lot of people who are just a huge fan of the flat cola. And I think if it works for you and it makes you want to drink a little more and it gets you through a race, and sometimes it's just something that releases the endorphins, and that's fine. It is calories, it is carbohydrates, it is sugar, so it will give you energy. So yeah, whatever works for you. I'm not going to say it's maybe the best option. I don't know if it'd be my number one choice, but I think if it works for you and it makes you feel good, and sometimes it really just helps people settle their stomach a little bit, then yeah, by all means, have a little Coke.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, Hadi, that I will want you to have a Coke ready to crack open at the pipeline on the way back to Leadville.
No problem, as long as I haven't guzzled it already. It's all
we'll make sure
yours,
there's
buddy.
enough for both
It's
of us.
all yours. Okay, let's recap what we have for our race day strategy from Roxanne. Carbs are king. I think we all should know that by now, but maybe not. I mean, maybe we don't. Don't put a chicken breast in your back pocket. And I've seen people do this. I've seen people ride with protein, with meat. Crazy. Carbs, 30 to 90 grams per hour is what you're shooting for on race day. Gels, if you do gels, we hope you do, take them with water because it'll relieve your gut of some of that stress. Calories from a bottle. Roxanne loves this strategy, and this works for a lot of folks too. If you can find an easy way to get your calories in by drinking them, by all means, go for that. And a Coke, I think we got somewhat of a sign off on the Coca-Cola there, Fatty. So we'll go with Coke too as part of our race day strategy. Okay, next time we talk with Roxanne, this is a biggie. This one is going to be the toughest discussion yet we have with Roxanne. Cramps. How do they happen? How do you avoid them? What do you do? Cramps next time with Roxanne Vogel.
At some point, Hadi, we have got to spend some time on this show planning out your crewing strategy for my Leadville 100 race. Most of it's pretty easy. I know, however, there's always a little bit of a mad dash getting back from the Twin Lakes Dam aid station to the pipeline aid station.
Yeah, the trick here is to have a mini version of everything you need packed up in one bag, park, and then hope you can get to a spot you and your racer agreed upon in time.
Yeah, I think I have something for you that's going to make that a little bit easier. It's the Banjo Brothers Large Commuter Backpack. It is a big pack with a waterproof inner lining, and it's easily big enough to hold everything I could possibly want you to have. You just sort of have that ready, throw it on your pack when you park, climb on a bike in the parking lot madhouse, and then just ride to our agreed upon spot at Pipeline.
And you'll look stylish doing it too.
Absolutely. It's a nice looking pack. I recommend the red one because that, in addition to being something that will stand out in the Leadville 100 race amongst all of the other crew people, you're also going to look nice and visible when you're using it for day to day on regular rides, carrying stuff, going to work, getting groceries, whatever. This pack can carry it. It is big. Yep. It is bright. It is a good pack.
Yep. So look for Hottie, me, in the Pipeline feed zone with a red pack on. I'll be facing backwards as the racers are coming towards me and screaming fatty at the top of my lungs.
Easy to find.
You can get 15% off your order by going to banjobrothers.com/fatty-favorites, which makes this pack $85 instead of the already very reasonable $100 it usually costs. Banjo Brothers is tough, practical, and affordable, Minneapolis-based, in business since 2003, and they are good guys. To get 15% off your order, go to banjobrothers.com/fatty-favorites.
Hottie, I think one of the things that makes the Leadville 100 so popular is there's a little bit of something in this course for every kind of rider. But without question, what the race really comes down to for everyone is climbing. It is the iconic climbs at altitude that we all plan for, dream about, and of course, train for.
And climbing is exactly what we're talking about today with Trainer Road's coach, Jonathan Lee.
Jonathan, welcome back to the Leadville podcast. We have been wanting to hear your thoughts about climbing, standing or seated. What's the right way?
Yeah, this is an interesting one, especially, with you, Eldon, having the past with single speed and plenty of riders and with these climbs being so long and gearing being what it is. There is no right way. That's the answer. And,
what?
I know, right? The right way is your way. And that sounds like a blue ribbon response, I know, but I guess we can dig a little bit deeper into this instead of just cutting it at about 10 seconds long. So here's the deal.
Oh, I thought you just meant my way is the right way, that
Yes.
you were just saying that, yes, I'm correct. That
Yes.
standing climbing is it.
Yeah. So here's the deal. We're talking about efficiency. So let's just talk about math first and I guess physics, right? When you're going up a climb and that climb is steep enough, you're going to be forced and take into account gearing, your weight, your fitness, and the grade or surface that you're riding on, right? All of that is going to, at some point, when the grade gets severe enough, it's going to bring you down to whatever your sustainable power is for whatever the duration is of that climb. That's just kind of what happens. And that's why a lot of the time when a person just rides away from you on a sustained climb, that person is just stronger than you. They have a higher threshold than you relative to their weight. And that's just how it works. So whether you're standing or you're sitting down, you're still going to be climbing on Columbine, for example, because let's talk about that one. That's such a big feature of the course, right? When you're going up Columbine and it's getting steeper and steeper, you are going to be brought down just to that base level where you are going to be up against the wall. You're probably going to be somewhere in your sweet spot zone, and you're just going to be working your way up. Now, seating or being seated in that saddle is technically more efficient. Because of the fact that you're using less muscle contraction throughout the rest of your body to continue riding your bike. You can stay planted, have an engaged core, of course, but your upper body is completely relaxed, and then you're just spinning your legs, in theory. However, that climb is steep enough, and gearing is what it is, and Leadville does have some fast sections, so we tend to put bigger chain rings on, that many times we're forced out of the saddle because of the low cadence that we end up getting ground down to. And here's the main thing. If you aren't familiar with the demands of climbing out of the saddle for a long time or climbing in the saddle for a long time, then you aren't adequately prepared for Leadville. You need to be able to do both. And you may do one more than another, and your body may be more efficient than another person when you're standing up. So you may be able to get away with it more. But the fact is you have to be familiar with all of it. And even from the start of the base phase, if you were following a trainer road plan, we were constantly we were giving you pedaling drills so that you would work on low and high cadence or work on standing out of the saddle or staying seated in the saddle, that sort of a thing. And, I'm looking ahead at Leadville. For me, I'm planning on actually running a 30 or 32 tooth chain ring rather than a 34 or a 36.
Ooh.
And I am planning on giving myself the chance to be able to spin, because I know that a weakness of mine is if I have to put out really high force standing for too long, then it really saps my legs. I'll give up some top end on the flats, but with a 10 tooth in the rear, I figure it might be okay, because I know that Columbine is going to be super decisive. So climbing or sitting down, it's something that you have to put the time in on and get familiar with and train your body with, and with both options.
That you brought up gear. So it's a bad thing to bring up gear here, Jonathan. So are you running Eagle? Do you have a 50 or not?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I have a 50. I have the wireless Eagle, or Axis as they call it. I call it the Freebird, but yes, I have that one. So
lucky you. I think you'll be fine. 3250 is going to be plenty for you. I would say, as an experienced person, there 30 is going to be. You're going to be spun out, and you're going to wish you had at least that 32. So with a 50, that's a dinner plate back there. You're going to be great going up Columbine and anything else. I am a seated climber. And in fact, I was on a long ride recently, just before we recorded this episode of the podcast. And what I do is I use just mental cues. I tell myself, get up out of the saddle. You cannot sit here forever. First of all, you're going to rub your rear end raw. And second of all, you've got to, I was always told occasionally you want to engage other muscles and relieve some of the fatigue you're using on the main pushing quad muscles. Is that a theory you subscribe to?
Yeah, absolutely. Muscular recruitment patterns vary from person to person. If they're in from what may appear to be a similar position, they may be pedaling with very different muscles. And you can do that yourself in a seated or standing position. It's not like you only use a certain muscle group in a certain way when you're seated, and then standing, it's a different one. You change that constantly, whether you're kicking and pulling on the pedals a little bit more when you're seated, or you're pushing down and pulling up a little bit more, or you're trying to paint perfectly smooth circles with your feet. You can do all those things to kind of change up the stress or the demand on different muscles when you're seated. And the same thing goes with standing. If you go a little bit, if you stay so that your rear end is a little further back and you're standing up, your chest is probably going to be a little bit lower. You're going to use totally different muscles than if your pelvis is moved forward toward the handlebars and you're more upright. So yeah, it is something that you can do. So basically, Leadville is so long, it's so hard that you are going to push your body to its limits and then some. So when your body finds those limits and you think, I just can't spin these pedals a single pedal stroke more if I stay in the seated position, get up and change that. Or if you're seated, maybe try changing up how you're pedaling when you're seated on that bike. Think of painting those smooth circles, or think of kicking and pulling a little bit more rather than pushing and pulling up. Or like, you said there, just get up out of the saddle. It's a smart way to do it. I think that it's the only danger that I see is if people aren't familiar with standing or seated climbing for an extended period of time, they can find themselves in a spot where they are running away from fatigue, but they're running to a spot where they're just going to accrue more fatigue. So once again, you just have to make sure you're familiar with the demands of both.
Yep. Have both those arrows in your quiver.
No doubt.
Okay, to recap the notes here from Jonathan on climbing. Remember, it's a power to weight thing, and some folks just have a better power to weight ratio than others. So if you see somebody climbing away from you on Columbine, don't panic. Race your race, especially on that thing. The thing's a beast. It's like over an hour and a half just to get up. So long climbs.
You'll catch them on the downhill.
You'll get them on the downhill. Or on the flat somewhere. So long climbs, race your race. Seated climbing is, in theory, more efficient, but be able to do both. And if you're unfamiliar with standing, then in training, try to stand some. And if you stand a lot in training, like Fatty, put your butt down in the saddle and do a long seated climb once in a while, Fatty. Also,
I do both. I do both.
By doing both, you can recruit different muscle fibers and give maybe the quads a little relief, and then emphasize some other muscle groups by both seated and standing climbing. We want to thank again Jonathan Lee of Trainer Road for joining us and giving us some climbing tips.
Let's wrap up Season 2, Episode 14 of the Leadville podcast, presented by Floyd's of Leadville. If you like our show, give us a 5-star rating and review over at Apple Podcasts. Also, share it with your other cycling friends, and be sure to support our sponsors. Let them know you appreciate them making this show possible.
Meanwhile, if you have ideas or questions for us, head to the Leadville100podcast.com comment section and get in touch.
And be sure to follow me on Twitter. I am at Fat Cyclist. You'll find Hottie at Michael Houghton. And you can find us both on Facebook. And we're active in the Leadville 100 MTB participants group. If you got a question, ask us. You can DM it, or you can just post it on the forum. And there's a good chance we'll answer it right here in the show.
All right, good luck in your training. Thanks for listening, and we will see you at the start line.
Time to land into your corrals. Riders, you cannot set your bike down on the ground. These are the Leadville 101 rules. Remember, no setting your bike down on the ground. Of course, the corrals, as you know, gold up front, silver onto red.